And 3, 2, 1, action.
Hello.
Well, you start.
Wow.
No, you start.
Hello.
Man, you are
Yeah.
a master podcast introer.
Some people have said that.
We've got real standing energy today. Thanks, Justin. Thank you.
Yeah.
Take a bow, Mike.
Standing.
Standing ovation.
I can't do
Not too
that.
far.
For an audio medium, like some podcasts are, that is
People will know we're standing.
yeah, you could
People
hear
will know.
Justin's belly button because that's where the microphone was. Hey, welcome to the Weekday.
Cavernous.
This is episode 86, and I know that because I have it pulled up on my laptop. We are standing today, so if it sounds a little off or if it sounds a little frightening around here, there's a lot of cool visual stuff we can do with all of this. Like I can do my elevator, like
Yeah. Yep. No, that's definitely the stuff people who listen to this want to know. They feel that. Yep. Boo. Yep. Okay. It's amazing.
yeah. So if you're listening, I just did my elevator gag that I'm so well known for. It's because I'm good at squats. It's raining out here in the Tampa Bay area, and it's supposed to rain all day. I don't know if you knew that. It is literally supposed to rain all day.
Yes.
Cool.
I'm happy.
I have that real sort of tired thing going on. So I figured, like, hey, let's stand for this episode and see what kind of energy. Now, already it feels a little chaotic. It feels like we chose violence with the podcast today instead of humanity. So a couple of things before we get moving forward. We're going to do a new segment.
New segment.
Yeah, it's going to be called Listener Feedback.
It's called Mailbag.
Oh, mail time.
Mail time.
Are we going to get copywritten for that one?
No, I don't think so.
Because that's the Blue's Clues thing, right?
No, wait, now we might.
Bob's Clues. So on our last episode, episode 85, alternate title was Mike Cosper Hates Megachurches. We talked about the fact that Hillsong was bad.
You spelled Mike Cosper's name wrong.
No, it's not. K-O-S-P-E-R?
No, it's C-O-S. Keep going.
No, K looks like C.
Okay.
With a handle.
Yep.
So we had a number of comments. Thank you for those comments. Please keep those coming.
This is in an effort to gain more comments on our next. You see what I'm doing?
I like it. It's the engagement train.
Yeah.
All aboard the engagement train.
That's what we call it. We call it the engagement train.
There were a couple of things. So a different vibe commented because the name of the title of the episode was "Is Hillsong Bad?" ? And they said yes, it's bad. Next question. Solid. I appreciate that. Chris Loves 6171 talked about Jesus going outside the church and how the fact that real ministry happening outside the church is it happens outside the church instead of inside of the church, period. Jesus came for those who are lost. He said he'd abandoned the 99 to go after the one. So why are churches preachy inside of a place where lost people won't step foot into? Go sit at a bar, go sit with a homeless person. That's real Jesus living. Your thoughts?
Sure. Also, the life of the both and is
strong.
where that happens.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I agree. I agree with the premise that part of being evangelical is going to people. I definitely agree with that. But I also agree that Jesus told Peter, hey, upon this rock, I'm going to build this church.
well, and like, what is a church? A church is not just a worship service. A church is also doing that kind of stuff. But like that's not to devalue what happens inside of a church building. I think that we're undervaluing what happens outside the walls of the church building. So I don't disagree, but I also don't agree 100%.
Cool. There's that's living in the tension there.
That's the both and.
LEDC character performer 978. Thanks for your comment, by the way. I know we had another one that was sort of rejected or something. I don't know. There was a filter process. But you said you like when churches speak out on the issues. That's us. We speak out on the issues.
That's what I'm known for,
Speaking out on the issues?
Issue speaker.
Where are you on women voting? Suffrage.
I would say I'm for it.
You're for women's suffrage?
Yep.
I don't know. I played Red Dead Redemption 2, and there was women's suffrage in there. I am also for it. So, no, thank you. We're not making fun. Seriously, thank you for your comment there. It's pretty awesome. And then the last one from Brent Petty, 4223. Just a suggestion. I know the long format opening might be okay for radio, but it took 11 minutes before you addressed the topic. And they're not wrong.
I would say it would be really funny if we just went, all right, today's topic. That's a great segue.
That is a segue. And they also said, by the way, awesome tile backdrop. Did you get it from the tile shop? I used to work there, and we sold that 3D tile. I actually don't know where we got it from.
The tile shop.
on the internet.
What do they sell at the tile shop?
Toilets. Right?
Yeah.
Go to the toilet store. We are going to get into our topic in just a second here. But thanks, everybody, for commenting. Keep throwing your comments in, and we will read them in a non-snarky format next time as well.
And this is how we'll address them. Because I thought about like writing back to all these people. I was like, you know what? Let's just talk about it.
Yeah, let's just talk about it. Also, Brad, the Brad Guitar Miller, Brad Guitar Miller. You've got a sweet middle name. Your middle name is Guitar.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
You know what's crazy is he plays guitar too.
No.
I feel like if your middle name is Guitar, you got to play guitar.
He also builds guitars.
You know what? My middle name is Alan, and so sometimes I just
wrenches.
Alan around.
Yeah, or you just build wrenches.
Yeah.
Allen wrenches. You just take pieces of metal and bend them into L's.
It's Ellen. Is it Ellen wrench?
Allen.
Allen.
There's my Michigans coming out there.
Allen.
Allen crayon.
Allen.
Go to the creek and get up off the roof.
Tad.
Yeah. Wow, that was really good. Tad.
Yeah, Tad.
Yeah, that's Todd for those that are not from around there.
Yep.
Hey, we are going to be back in just a second, but before we do that, Justin, what's your middle name?
Ooh, do I
Justin.
give my real? Tyler.
What? No,
Justin Tyler?
I kind of wish your middle name was Justin.
Justin Tyler.
I mean, it could be.
Let's do that. I'm gonna edit
JJD.
I'm gonna edit the. Go back to your face in 3, 2, 1.
My middle name is
Justin Deal. Hey,
JJD.
just in case we drop you after the break, we'll be right back. I'm trying to turn it.
It didn't work.
Thanks for joining us here on the Weekday today. And if you're interested in anything that we're doing with our global online community here at Bay Hope Church, head over to bayhope.com, type in digital into the search box, and join any one of our communities, either on Facebook, on Discord, or on any one of our social media platforms. We can't wait to engage with you and hang out with you.
We are going to roast some churches today.
Is that? Okay.
That's our topic. Let's roast churches. How do you feel about that?
Love it.
Today on Nightline, I don't feel like they don't stand on Nightline. Actually, you know what? Bill Hader, one of the funniest dudes in the world. Watching him go through his repertoire of Nightline voices is some of the funniest
Morrison,
things.
right?
Yeah, Keith Morrison, and then there's a bunch of other guys in there, like old guys. Anyway, there's an app called TikTok that you can look these things up on. It's very good.
Good to know.
We're going to talk about something a little serious. And it's going to involve churches, and it's going to involve church growth. So let me give a little bit of preamble here. Mike is taking over as our interim creative director. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Interim executive director.
That's right.
Of creative.
Yeah. Get the long title correct.
Is that the actual full title? What does your business card say?
I have no idea.
You don't have a business
I
card?
don't.
Okay. We're very proud of him. We love it. But he gave us this book by Seth Godin a couple of weeks ago, a brilliant author, also Christian, right?
I don't think so.
No?
But I don't know.
He's been in the business world forever. He's been interviewed by Carey Nieuwhof and a whole bunch of other people. And where this kind of sparked my head was this book is mainly about business. It's mainly about being bought in as a team and growing a team and really influencing people, not because of producing widgets and not for industrial sake,
right.
but more for significance's sake, more for personal sake. And that actually got me thinking a lot about the church, not necessarily about Bay Hope Church, although Bay Hope Church in general, but about church growth in general. And how when you say the word growth, it engenders this idea of everything has to go up and to the right. It engenders this idea of everything has to be growing for your shareholders. You have to keep producing 1% and 2% revenue year over year, month over month, or else you're failing. And so that actually happened at the same time as Apple had their WWDC conference a couple weeks ago, their Worldwide Developers Conference, which I love. I'm an Apple fanboy, like unabashed Apple fanboy, and I love watching the WWDC thing. And they introduced the Apple Vision Pro, which is their brand new, groundbreaking AR VR headset. And out of all of the reviewers and some of the big things coming out of that, obviously everybody's blown away. It's Apple. It's going to be great. It's going to be mad expensive, and nobody's going to be able to afford it. But it's going to be great, and it's going to.
Well, you're not going to be able to afford it.
I'm not going to be able to afford it.
Some people will.
Some people will, and I'm going to envy them,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to feel bad about it. But I was listening to a bunch of podcasts and a bunch of reviews and things kind of surrounding that, and one of the things that kept coming up was, this is a brilliant move for Apple to release this in 2024, mid 2024. And they started kind of spinning why that was. So their profits and their sales are up already this year, and they'll continue to be up because the iPhone is like the biggest thing in the world, and all of their services revenue and all of their movies and everything is up and to the right. But next year they don't necessarily have a full slate of new chips, new computers, and so the Apple Vision Pro, even though it might not sell and might not produce revenue, what it is going to produce is goodwill for shareholders. And this is going to allow shareholders to even see a 1% revenue growth as, okay, this is good. Like,
Well,
we're
they're
doing
bringing
something.
something to market that nobody else really has.
Right, and it could be a flop, and it could let lose them money. Now, granted, they're a $1 trillion company, so like losing a couple of $1 billion, they're going to be okay. I'm not super worried about them. But bringing that back to the church world, I've been thinking a lot in terms of up and to the right, in terms of sales numbers, in terms of revenue. And part of my problem when we start to think about how to grow a church is that I have ingrained inside of me that everything needs to be up and to the right. And that's not how the church is. And so I kind of want to open up a discussion about what does healthy church growth actually look like, A, and B, what are we doing about that here at Bay Hope Church? Like, what are we doing to buck the trend? What are we doing to also grab onto the trend? And also, this is in light of the Hillsong thing, where Hillsong, it seems like, was just franchising churches. Because that's essentially what it was. It was just sending church franchises off into the world and saying, okay, bring back money to the mothership. Don't bring back any controversy, but just bring money and popularity. So, Mike, like, first things first, what does healthy church growth look like to you?
Oh, a really small question. Really easy question to answer.
Less than 10 words. Dead air is great. I'm a big fan.
Where's our waiter?
Check, please.
So I think that church growth looks like more people. And I think church growth looks like more people growing. And I think it looks like a lot of the things that we think it looks like.
But how do you...
So hold on. It's like Occam's razor a little bit, where it's like the clearest explanation is usually like the right explanation.
Right.
However, it is no secret that, especially historically speaking, religious institutions that exist to grow for growth's sake, to gain power, to gain influence, it does not end well.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is a very, like, church growth is growing a church. So, I mean, it's people, it's money, it's impact, it's influence. But if you exist to have those things be the things that you exist for, then that is what becomes the issue. And so, you know, I think that it's funny that we're talking about this topic. Like, I created a podcast based on this specifically, this idea of healthy church growth. And like, we never really were able to fully define it, because in my head, I was thinking, because the person who I started with, I kind of started it to be like sort of this creative /
It was like a mentoring thing, wasn't it?
yeah, you know, but then it's really hard for like the creative wing of the church to actually be the driving growth of the church.
Why?
Because a lot of what we do is in response to what else is happening within the church. I also think, this is just me, I'm just shotgunning.
You're shotgunning, huh? Shotgunning church growth, baby.
Woo!
Party time.
I'm just sort of shooting out. Good gracious.
We got some real standing energy
Yeah,
today,
we
boys
do.
and
Well,
girls.
you do for sure.
Man.
Almost went sitting on that one.
Yeah. So I also think that, like, you know, church growth can be a really, really slippery slope when you are expanding. Like, what's the difference between building the kingdom and building an empire?
What's the difference between?
It's not part of my standard
I am
routine.
so sorry.
It's not part of my standard routine.
Your tight 10 does not include healthy church growth, huh?
No, not yet. It will.
Keep going. I'm so sorry.
But like for real, I think that might be if you're building a church because you want to build an empire, if you want to colonize, your city, your community, whatever, for the name of Jesus, I don't think that that's the right way to do it. How do you do that? How do you draw that line of like proper healthy growth or just like growth in general? I don't know. So,
okay. I remember seeing something that Carey Nieuwhof had written about, and there it was. Do all healthy things grow? And one of the things that he was positing was that the idea that goodness, I'm going to lose the whole thing. It's fine.
I feel like you are like,
I'm all over the place today because I have 4 competing thoughts about this. One of them being church growth is a tough thing to measure. So you're talking about the Occam's razor idea.
It isn't.
Well, but like what is how do you measure? Because we live in Western culture, and Western culture says that we need to measure certain things. That's where that in that Seth Godin book it talks about the industrial complex, and we are in late stage capitalism. One of your favorite terms, and late stage capitalism says that there has to be not even incremental growth, but explosive growth to show.
Yeah, year over year.
Year over year growth has to be above a certain amount.
Right.
But what does that mean in the church world? And so that's the first thing. The second thing is when you start talking about the idea of healthy growth. Okay, where does that start in a church? Does that start with the lead pastor? Does that start with the discipleship team? Does that start with the small group team? We're not producing widgets. We're not producing watches and phones and computers. We're producing what? What are we producing? Mm-hmm. Disciples, but like, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Like, and I do another podcast with, I do a bunch of podcasts, but one of the podcasts I do is called
We Get It.
The Hybrid the Hybrid Disciple. Check us out on Instagram at Hybrid Disciple. But we talk about this idea of meeting digital and physical in discipleship and how to go back and forth, how to translate between digital and physical to digital. And one of the things that we keep coming back to in the podcast is how do you actually measure discipleship? Mm-hmm. Because that's the only way to help make sure that people are on track. And I think a lot of the times to measure discipleship, it's not in incremental day and week and month things. It's like it is a years long, decades long process of decisions and marriages and relationships and, focuses and how you spend your money over a certain period of time. And like, how do you measure that when you have, let's say, a church council or a church board of elders that's saying like, well, I don't know if the lead pastor is succeeding. Mm-hmm. So how does that strike you as the author of the Healthy Church Growth podcast?
I think that, again, how many baptisms have you had? How many, do you have a way for people to move down some sort of path? Do you have a way for people to connect? I don't think those are bad things to measure.
I'm not saying it's bad things to measure, but what I am saying is that it's tough to figure out where you are in a process because I'm struggling how to actually put this into words. And maybe that's part of my chaoticism today. But there's this broad swath of church knowledge that both you and I have, right? We know a lot of things about church. We know
so much.
We know the most. We know the most things about church.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry to everybody watching this.
No.
But part of what that actually means is that you have to distill that for the people that don't know necessarily as much as our two amazing intellects know.
Of course.
And when we then step into leadership, don't laugh over there. When we, I can't even hold that straight face. When we start to step into leadership, we have to be able to direct people and guide people and strategize and cast vision and all that. And like, I don't necessarily know how to do that when people are also saying like, hey, to succeed in the church world, you need to continue to grow.
Yeah.
So like let's take multi-site, for example. Like, do you multi-site a church or do you grow what you already have? Because we don't have unlimited resources, and you can't necessarily do both things. We're not Apple. We can't just throw $2 billion at a headset.
Why can't you do both?
Because we don't have the resources to do that. If we had unlimited resources, we'd hire more staff and then start just spitting multi-sites everywhere. But we don't have that. You made a comment yesterday during our pre-production where you said that if you have, what was the have something healthy and move it thing? Like, what was that all about?
Yeah, well, just like to create.
That was a Tony Morgan thing, right?
Yeah, probably. To grow something and then to uproot it and then replant it somewhere else to start to, replicate and duplicate is like a really good strategy when you're looking at a church. You don't want to plant something, like a fruit tree creates good fruit. And then that fruit carries seeds within it. So to see fruit come from this tree means that the tree is healthy. To gain a way for it to replicate and duplicate, it comes from a healthy source. So the best way to create something else is to take it from a healthy source. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that was sort of my thing. Like, yeah, you can plant something somewhere, but like, if you already have like a fertile ground for it to grow in, it's far easier to like plant something there, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. My question back to that would be, what about the church that doesn't have unlimited resources to do that? Like, what do you do?
Well, but like, what's the point of replicating something? Like that. This is kind of what I think I'm trying to get at is, are you in it to grow the kingdom? Or are you in it to build an empire? And so like, if you are a church of 200 people, your definition of growth looks similar, but also looks different than like what our definition of growth is as well. I think that a lot of what you're talking about is, we're trying to systematize discipleship, which is like a real problem and is a problem that people have been trying to figure out for centuries. This is not a new issue for us because Jesus had 12 people he really poured into. And then of those 12 people, he had 3 people he really poured into. And then of those 3 people, he had like 1 dude he really poured into. And so like, if he's sort of like a model for how we're supposed to do things, which like I would say he is.
Most of the time.
He had a large following, but also he had a very small group of people that like he was discipling essentially.
By the way, I just said most of the time there. I mean all the time. That was a joke. That was a look at me in my eyes. That was a joke. Keep going.
So I think that like therein lies a lot of the problem is when we expand. We're being
attacked by clowns.
When we expand beyond what maybe like we are capable of doing for growth's sake, as opposed to like what actual discipleship looks like, we're going to run into a lot of issues. And like, again, trying to circle back to like the Hillsong thing, it's crazy to me that I grew up thinking, Hillsong was this like tour de force, and like it was to a certain extent, but like Hillsong has not been around for very long.
30 years, right?
Yeah. And in the grand scheme of things, it has not been around for very long and had this like really just that kind of impact and influence on the global historical church. And like they got a little too big for their britches and
a lot too big.
And instead of trying to, and I mean, you can argue from the beginning, what were they trying to do to begin with? But, what ultimately brought them down was them trying to uphold a brand in their empire rather than growing the kingdom in the church. So that would be, and like, I am, even though, and we've said this a bunch of times, like I am employed by essentially a mega church. My wife, my sister, my brother, my best friend, my best friend's wife, like we are all employed essentially by a mega church. And like, I am consistently trying to figure out if this is the best way for us to be doing church, even though like I understand the conflict of interest. Well, so like I'm the first one, or I'm one of the first ones to like really want to engage with this idea of like, does this model look like what a healthy church and healthy church growth should look like?
Right. When
you place growth as your primary objective, you can grow a church really, really fast. But, you know, looking at nature again, weeds grow a lot faster than fruit trees do, or, you know, something that produces something of value. Weeds grow really fast.
Yeah.
And so again, if you're only looking at growth, then we should just plant gardens full of weeds.
Well, I feel like that's where it's also kind of like difficult to just like almost like this fog kind of surrounding it, because I feel like there's a lot of churches that start off, I would even argue pretty much all churches probably start off with great intentions.
Sure.
Sure. Like they just really want to, you know, build the kingdom.
Yeah.
And make disciples and bring people to Christ. But then I feel like what's really difficult about that is that I feel like probably a lot of churches end up just failing because it's difficult to probably like get away from this mindset of, okay, like Andy, like you were talking about, we need resources in order to do this. Mm-hmm. How can we do this better? How can we make more disciples? Which is a good goal.
Right.
But then it's like, how do you make more disciples? Well, we need more resources. Now, how do we get more resources? And when that becomes the goal, rather than the disciple making part of it, or bringing people to Christ, then that's where I feel like churches really start to run into trouble.
Well, and start to make concessions on different things. You know, Carey Nieuwhof is starting this new podcast. Since we have brought him up sort of too, but starting this new series on his podcast about integrity and character. And the more an organization you lead grows, the more character you actually have to have. It's almost like this.
Oof, that's close.
This, it like a square law or something, you know, like if your organization grows double, you essentially have to work on your character 4 times as much.
Yep.
And so, you know, obviously I'm making an analogy here. I don't know how you work on your character 4 times as much as if your organization doubles or whatever, but that has to be the primary thing that you focus on, rather than like, okay, well, we can do this, and this to increase our resource margin. I also think that you know, looking at the Bible, how many times do we see leaders as they grow in authority and influence fail time and time again? Yeah. David, when he was at the height of his power, failed so miserably and so hard. And really, the nation of Israel never really, I mean, you could argue it was ill-fated from the beginning, but they never really recovered from that. It was just the top of a very long downward spiral.
Yeah.
And so I think in some ways, we as humans were never meant to like have growth exceed
potential.
Yeah.
Or not even potential, but cap.
Right. You know, like I think we are, our ability is capped for a reason. Mm-hmm. You know, like we are not, especially from like a religious faith-based institution, I am not supposed to run a worldwide, you know, like gigantic organization, because like if I am an image bearer of God, God has partnered with me as a co-laborer to tend his garden. But he's also given that to you, and he's also given that to Justin and to Austin, to all of us. So like, I think there are organizational structure, and to have organizations is a good thing. But like so many people are also called to do the same thing. And like, you know, back to, you guys have mentioned resources, like we serve a God of unlimited resources. Resources are not the issue. They might be an issue for our specific organization, but that doesn't mean someone else does not have the ability to tap into those resources. Mm-hmm. And that might be one of the reasons why we do find a cap or we do find a limit that we're not supposed to necessarily push past. We're supposed to empower other people to, really leverage those resources to build, some sort of organization, some sort of community to tend their own gardens as well. We all tend the same garden together. It's one big happy family.
Yeah. It's the same thing lifting weights. Like if you max out whatever, if you max out your squat, like, okay, cool, you can't go any further without breaking something, but you have to strengthen every other muscle around the squat muscles essentially to then break that plateau. And where I keep landing with so like Bay Hope is in an interested, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining why this has been on my heart so much. Bay Hope is in a very interesting position right now. We're coming out of Riot. I feel like we've been riding a wave for 6 months, really since the beginning of the year.
Beginning of the year.
There has been a noticeable increase in not only attendance. I don't know budget-wise. I don't really care about that stuff.
I mean, attendance-wise, we are up like 30% over what we were last year.
Year over year.
Love it.
And that's not like online numbers are holding steady and growing, and like we're not losing people online, which means that people are just showing up, and then also the people. There's a cool interplay there.
Riot was 50% larger than it was last year.
Right, and there was a better energy coming out of that. We have VBS next week, which there's a ton of kids signed up for that.
400.
Yeah, like that's more than last year. I can't remember. Last year was around 300, right?
I have no idea.
Yeah, so we're up, let's say 20.
We'll have over 500 people on campus for VBS.
Which is nuts, right? So then we roll out of that into the fall, and the fall is typically church launch season. So ideally, that wave is going to propel us into the future. I don't want us to rest on our laurels. I want us to push as a church. Like I think there's a lot there that we can push on, namely discipleship, namely how do we get people into groups, namely, and the idea of multi-site comes up. The idea of, okay, what do we do about all sorts of other like things around? Do we have to institute new programs, like all that other stuff? And that's the stuff that I start to get into, because in business mode,
right,
you just open up another factory line and then produce another product.
Yep.
We can't do that.
Right.
We can't just produce another product, because we have one product, and that's the product of Matthew 28, go and make disciples of all nations. So we have to open up a new avenue for that. But like, what does our new avenue look like? How do we continue to recruit volunteers to then grow the thing to then continue? So that's why I'm asking this question right now.
I mean, I think you kind of mentioned working out as well. I've mentioned like the garden analogies and all that kind of stuff. I think for growth to be healthy in a church, it probably takes a little bit longer than we want to give it credit for. And I think that a lot of it has to do with things that people don't see. Riot's a great example. So Riot was 50% larger than it was last year. I've made the analogy that it was Sunday night, started with like a boulder on top of a mountain, and we pushed that boulder down the mountain, and it just gained steam as the week went on, where sometimes it feels like the week of we do Riot is like pushing a boulder uphill.
And then there's a crest Wednesday or Thursday night.
But I say all that to elaborate on that analogy, where like, how did that boulder get there from the beginning? And what happened was 6 to 8 months ago, people in the student ministry and in the ministries world started talking about it, started having meetings, started ideating, started putting plans in place, to really make something happen, so that by the time we got to when Riot started, we got to experience the fruit of their labors, essentially. But it took time, it took effort, it took a lot of people being involved in on it. And so, we can all say and all feel like, oh, wow, it was so amazing this year, which it was. Wow, it was so much bigger than last year. Like, there were ways that happened. There were people behind the scenes working tirelessly to make that happen, to put a goal in front of their face and said, we're going to make this happen, for not so that we can say like, wow, Riot was so much bigger, Riot was so much better, but because 45 people said yes to Jesus and 40 people got baptized. Like, those are really great, like, indicators that something is growing, that something is going well.
Right.
There are continuing indicators that like you want to continue on. So like this is the both and thing that I think that we're talking about is like is the visual aspect of healthy church growth only baptisms and salvations? No.
Right.
And that's where a lot of churches stop because they got pictures of it and they got video of it and we can post it on our social media and look at how great we are, you know? No, it's the continued on. And so how do you continue to define, wins for your organization, for your team, for your church? That like this life that we live and that we have chosen to live is a continual one. It's a process. It's a journey. It's the process of sanctification. Like it doesn't start or it doesn't just start and then end. It is a lifelong opportunity for us to grow closer to Jesus.
Yeah, it's the KPI is not the end. The key performance indicator of the baptism, and that's where I keep pushing up against is I don't want us to just stop at the baptism, salvation, whatever. I don't want to stop at a nickels and noses mentality because we've lost everything at that point.
But we shouldn't throw those out.
I'm not saying throw them out.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like I want us
But like I think that's the problem is that so many churches are pushing back. Like that one comment who I'm grateful that they put in that comment that they had a really bad experience in church.
Yep.
Shouldn't the church be outside the walls, go to a bar, go meet some people, go be Jesus? I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But like I also think you need a community of people gathered, worshiping and being encouraged and beating people and all that kind of stuff for you to then do that stuff more effectively. How did that person learn to do that? Like how does that person know that you should go and leave the walls of the church and go to a bar and go be Jesus with skin on or whatever? Like all of these things have value. And where I think the problem is that because we see large churches and all the money they have and all the financial impropriety and all of the harassment and the abuse and all that kind of stuff, that we just need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like, no, we just need to continue on in this journey, and continue to focus in on the process of sanctification, try and pull out those KPIs wherever we can see them so that we can know, are we winning? Are we not winning? How do we evaluate where we are? Because like in general, we want to create more disciples that create more disciples.
Right. Perfect. I think that's a great way to start to turn the ship here. Justin, before we end up, you said 7 words this whole time, and we apologize because we've been sort of bloviating and being just a parade of gas bags over here. Anything to add to the discussion?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, for what Mike was saying at the very end there, I completely agree with that because, like you said, for one, where did you learn how to do all of that? Go out and, talk to people and meet people like that, and be able to make disciples. Like, there needs, there's a place where we learn to do that, but then also not only that, but we constantly need to be poured into as well, and we need to have these communities that we're worshiping with and being with, because otherwise, if all we're doing is going out and meeting people where they are, which is amazing, if that's all we're doing, it would become easier and easier for us to start to gradually become like the world.
Yeah.
Without, refreshing and being poured into again.
Yeah. It's wide.
Constantly.
It's being wide without the depth, and then vice versa. It's being deep without the width.
Yeah.
And so like God has called us to do both.
Yeah.
And you can spread yourself too thin. And you know what? Sorry, Justin, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no.
Sometimes when we get too focused on the outside aspects of it, we end up becoming the same type of person who only goes to a church service. It ends up being the same exact thing. So sorry, keep going.
Oh no, that was pretty much it. What I was going to say, but yeah, you're right. I feel like that's the perfect example of why we do constantly need this refreshing, because our human nature doesn't want to be like Jesus. Our human nature wants to be like the world. So without getting that refreshing, how are we going to become more like him?
Sure.
So,
one thing I did notice is that you're taller than me. No, it's okay. Be taller than me. My children are
There's nothing I can do.
My children are going to be taller than me. Grace is 16, going to be 17 in 3 weeks. She's almost as tall as I am. Carter is 14, and he's almost as tall as I am. Austin dwarfs me.
Yeah, he's a big
guy. I feel like I'm living in a land of tall people.
You are.
All the time.
Yeah.
And that stinks.
Yeah.
Comment below if you're short, and then maybe I can start an alliance. The SPA, Short People's Alliance.
Yep. Okay.
Or .org.
I mean, my wife is short, so
She could join the alliance.
Who you know?
I do. My wife is shorter than me. She's not as short as your wife.
Yeah.
Who you know.
I do.
Okay. Thanks so much for joining this very rambly episode.
No, put comments. Let us know what you think church growth looks like.
I really would love to read your comments next time, honestly.
Yeah.
I really would. I want, if you've made it this far, congratulations. But I really would love to read your comments live on the air and react to them, and then maybe be less snarky. Are you dancing? You have to go to the bathroom?
I don't know. I think
Coffee.
we're standing.
Maybe we won't stand next episode.
I don't know. I kind of like it.
I mean, I'm for it. Justin, how do you feel about it?
I like it.
You like it?
It's a good change. I like it.
Yeah, I can move like this. Back.
All right.
Or forward. Hey, we're going to go do other stuff. Thank you so much for joining this episode of the Weekday. We love you. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the Weekday here at Bay Hope Church. And if you are watching this on YouTube, do us a quick favor and like and subscribe. I know you hear this all the time, but it really does help everything that we're doing here on our YouTube channel. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, do us a quick favor and follow us on Spotify and leave an awesome review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks so much.